Hello everyone, and welcome to the Universal Tools, Designated Supports, and Accommodations Overview video. I'm Jennifer Paul, the English Learner and Accessibility Assessment Consultant for the Michigan Department of Education. Before you continue with this video, please pause the video and go to www.michigan.gov/mstep. Once you're there, navigate to the Student Supports and Accommodations section and download or print the Supports and Accommodations Guidance document. Take a moment to go do that before resuming this video. Warning! This video is filled with good information and bad jokes. The topics that we're going to cover today are related to a review of Universal Tools, Designated Supports, and Accommodations. We want to make sure everyone understands the framework in which educators and testing coordinators work and function. I will also be sure to point you to where to find additional information that you should review if you are a testing coordinator or are just interested in getting more information. Let's talk about the big ideas for the UTSDA framework. There are a couple big ideas to keep in mind as you think about Universal Tools, Designated Supports, and Accommodations. Or, if you'd like to use a really bad acronym, UTDSUS. The most important thing to remember is to provide UTSUS to the students that they are already using in their regular instruction. What you don't want to have happen is have a student that begins an assessment and is using a support or accommodation that they have never before used in their life. This will create a situation where the student might be confused. It will just add to additional stress that they may be already facing as they attempt to take their assessments. Remember, the use of universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations is designed to remove barriers for students while not over-advantaging some students over others. You need to make team-based decisions for each student. In most cases, students are not only working with one teacher, they are going to be working with multiple teachers. And in those cases, you want to make sure that you are touching base with all educators that are working with that student so that you can fully understand the needs that the student may have at the time of the assessment. Similarly, you will want to make sure that you are making individual student decisions. Every student's needs are different, and so, because of that, you can't make blanket statements about enabling or disabling certain UTSDAs at the time of the assessment, just because it's easier from a process standpoint to do that. Let's review what we just talked about. What is the most important aspect of selecting UTSDAs? If you said, select all of them, you're definitely, undoubtedly, and absolutely incorrect. Remember that the most important thing is to provide UTSDAs to students that they already use on a regular basis in the classroom. True or false? Educators need to collaborate with each other and make sure they are making decisions for which UTSDAs each and every individual student should use for the classroom and then for the assessments. If you said true, then you are very definitely and absolutely correct. Moving right along, let's all learn to say UTSDA and what it really means when we say it. We have a three-tiered approach to thinking about supports and accommodations for students. The first tier is what we call Universal Tools, UT. This is a category of tools that are available to all students, and the use of these tools is primarily student-driven. So, an example of this could be a highlighter. The second tier is what we call designated supports, DES. These are things that are available to students that have a specific need that has been previously identified in the classroom. The decision for the student to use the designated support is primarily educator-driven. What we mean by this is that an educator or team of educators has decided that the student needs this support. They are using this support regularly also in the classroom. A team of educators does not necessarily mean an IEP team. It could just be a group of the student's teachers getting together to discuss the student's needs. That is still what we would consider a team approach to discussing and deciding what might benefit a student. An example of a designated support could be the oral translation of test content into the student's native language. Or another example could be a student who is a struggling reader but does not have an IEP. Maybe using some specific classroom supports, such as needing to have the text read aloud to them or even reading aloud the text to themselves. These could be the supports the students use then on the M-STEP assessments. And the third tier is what we call accommodations. These are things that are available to students with disabilities or those who have 504 plans whose need for this accommodation is documented on the IEP or 504 plan. Anything that you see that is titled as an accommodation in our M-STEP resources is only going to be available for this group of students. And it's not just that it's available to this group of students. It is required that the need for the accommodation be outlined in that documentation. For example, a student who needs to have text-to-speech passage enabled for the M-STEP ELA test must have the need for an audio support for text identified in their IEP. More warnings. This warning isn't actually a joke. This warning pertains to the assignment and use of accommodations for students who do not have IEPs or 504 plans. Please don't do this. OEAA actually monitors the use of accommodations on our state assessments. If you provide an accommodation to students who do not have IEPs or 504 plans, your district will receive a call or email about this from our office. But how do you know what your students can actually use? Keep in mind that not everything a student uses in the classroom may be allowable on the M-STEP. This is largely due to what is being tested on the M-STEP. For example, there are portions of the math assessment on which students may not be able to use a calculator even if they have an IEP that says that they can. OEAA is responsible for ensuring that the test scores are meaningful, and test scores can only be meaningful if students use UTSAs that don't negatively impact the content we're trying to test. All of the information you need can be found in the Supports and Accommodations Guidance document. Within that document, you can find what we call the Student Supports and Accommodations table. This table is organized by test and content area. Each content area is then organized by the three categories that we just reviewed: universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations. This is going to show you what is allowable. And of course, if something is not listed that a student may be using frequently in the classroom, please send us an email at mde-oeaa@michigan.gov to inquire about the use of that particular support. So let's take a look at the Supports and Accommodations table in the guidance document you found earlier. As mentioned, the table is split apart by content area. Within the table, you'll notice that there are symbols indicating different pieces of information, such as whether or not the UTSTA must be ordered or can be identified in the online testing management system. I'll stop here and let you look through one of these pages. As you started reviewing this document, you might also notice that there are a large number of other types of guidance in this document. For example, you'll also find information pertaining to how to scribe for students, or even what types of qualifications on-the-fly oral translators should have for students who need a translation of the M-STEP assessment. If you're a test coordinator, you need to make yourself familiar with all of the information in this document. You should start thinking about how to, in an organized way, make decisions about what students need for instruction and for the assessment, and how to ensure that students actually get what they need at the time of the assessment. Although OEAA does some monitoring of the UTSTAs that are used for students, the assignment of these is ultimately the responsibility of educators in the schools. There is no application process for the M-STEP assessments, which is different from the College Board assessments. Do you know if your colleagues are actively making decisions about what UTSTAs are needed for the classroom? If you said yes, congratulations! You win me saying congratulations to you. If you said no, don't worry. You're already taking the right steps toward improvement by watching this fantastic video. Do you know if you and your colleagues are actively making decisions about what UTSTAs are needed for the M-STEP? Again, if you said yes, then congratulations! You are getting your full dose of Jen Paul telling you congratulations today. If you said no, really, don't worry. Let's get started on figuring out how you can turn that UTSTA frown upside down. Step 1, get your colleagues together. You can do this as a whole building, by content area, by grade, or by identifying a program a set of students might be in, like English learners. But the bottom line is you need to get your peeps together to talk about making some UTSTA decisions. Step 2, discuss your students' needs. As you review your students, it might be helpful to use Tool 4, Accessibility Supports in the Classroom, a document that we created to help classroom teachers actually have real discussions about what students' needs are in the classroom. You can find this document by going to the Student Supports and Accommodations section of the M-STEP website and clicking on Recording and Tracking Resources. Once you've identified what a student may need and be using in the classroom, your next step should be to review what is allowable on the M-STEP assessments. For example, although a student may be getting a read-aloud support for all of the materials that they use across all of the content areas, the student may not be able to have the support for, let's say, third grade reading passages. Do you remember which document to look at to find out what is allowable on the M-STEP assessments? Yes, that one document with all that information in it. It's called the Supports and Accommodations Guidance document. That document holds the tables with the information you'll be looking for. Step 3, get it together. No, seriously. You'll need to actually stay organized somehow. Yeah, you'll have Tool 4, which is great. But do you know who is going to be responsible for putting information about the UTSTAs students will be using into the Insight portal? If that's you or someone else, you'll probably love to have an easy way to input all that information for students. Use our worksheets or our Excel spreadsheet to keep track of the information. You can fill this out together in your group that you convened in Step 1. Step 4. Break! Now's your time to shine as you actually do all of this in your district. Please contact the department if you have any questions by sending an email to mde-oeaa@michigan.gov or by calling us at 877-560-8378. And may the UTSTA force be with you as you embark on your assessment journey.